everyone, and welcome back to the Better Advertising with Better Media podcast. Today, I'm incredibly excited to have one of the newest members to BTR, Lance Pacheco, who is recently joining our team from, well, I'm going to let you dive into all of your areas of expertise, actually. But the reason we are so excited about Lance being on the team is, as most of you all know, the future vision of the industry is full retail media. And Lance, you have an incredible background on agency side, on retailer side, and everything in between. So, one, incredibly excited to have you. For two, Lance, would love to tell everyone how you got started in our industry.
Yeah, no, thank you, Destiny. And super excited to be joining the Better Media team as well and hit the ground running in the coming weeks and months. Yeah, I can give you some background on me. I've been in the, digital advertising space for about 13 years. Straight out of college, I kind of stumbled into it, agency side within Group M, doing Google and Bing paid search ads, like traditional PPC back in the day. And then over time, I kind of stayed there for almost 8 years, grew up, promoted up to a director level. And that's where I was also kind of starting to oversee Amazon ads as well. Within Group M, I was both in the New York City and also the London office. I did a stint there and touched a lot of large clients. So like Dell, Bose, Tom Shoes, Coty, which is a luxury brand that they do like all the fragrances and stuff. Mars. So those are just a few brands I touched. And then agency side, after that, I kind of had an opportunity to go and work at Amazon. So Amazon Ads team. I was there as a senior account manager, focused in CPG. Had direct client relationships with Fortune 500 companies, C-suite for like J&J, Keurig Dr. Pepper, Smuckers, Abbott Nutrition, L'Oreal were just a few of the brands I touched and kind of interacted with. And then the last year and a half, I actually was at DoorDash. So at DoorDash, they're actually creating a retail media network as well. So DoorDash Ads. So it's kind of very high growth stage there. Was working within the account management team, kind of educating them on best practices for PPC, and then how to pitch to clients, the ad products. And now I'm here.
I love it. Absolutely incredible. I will say, I feel like a lot of us are so naive in college that we stumble into agency side and then we get sucked in. A lot of people evolve either brand side or, go to maybe a little bit more of a, I don't want to say mature, but like agency side's not always easy. So you kind of have to suck them in when they're young and then they don't know any better. And then you evolve with the space and realize you can never leave.
Oh, for sure. I agree. Agency side, I think it can always be hit or miss. There's some good agencies where you have a great work-life balance, other ones where it doesn't exist. I've been at both, I think. And I'm excited to be here, though, because it seems great so far.
I'm so excited. I mean, we've seen so much maturity in the industry in the last 10 years, and Amazon's really pushing the gas pedal on that with a lot of the innovations they're forcing the market to keep up with. I mean, everything from data transparency with AMC to the ability to democratize TV with streaming TV and ad console. They're opening up a space that was typically only reserved for the brands that had the largest budgets. I'd say like a lot of your historical background is those brands, right? The segmentation between a brand budget and performance marketing budget. Now we're seeing that be opened up to everyone. Not to mention the complexity of now you have to choose which retailer you want to invest in. What are you most excited about in the next year after seeing a lot of the evolution in the space?
Sure. I think I'm most excited to create customized media plans or strategies for brands. There's so many retail media networks out there that a lot of brands aren't even aware they exist. I kind of took some notes here, just like some examples, like for apparel brands, they could, besides Amazon and like Walmart, they could also start leaning into like Bloomingdale's, Macy's, Nordstrom. Appliances could go into like Lowe's, Home Depot, Best Buy, grocery, Instacart, Kroger, Albertsons. Pet could be Chewy, PetSmart, Petco. There's just all these opportunities. And I think especially these smaller retail media networks, there's likely a lot less competition there. So a brand can likely hop in there and really kind of own the category or the space on that retailer's website. And I think especially here at Better Media, we have a great opportunity to help brands do that.
How do you advise brands on when is the right time to expand? How do they balance the work it takes to expand to a new network with the reach opportunity and competition? Is there any due diligence they can do prior when it comes to expansion?
Yeah, for sure. I think a large part of it right now within, I guess, these smaller retail media networks, we are still uncertain of scale and opportunity, to see if a brand's efforts and time is actually worth the effort, essentially. So I think right now, I think we're still very much in a test and learn phase with a lot of these smaller retail media networks. So I would kind of advise brands, yes, let's focus on our bread and butter, whether that's Amazon, Walmart, maybe even Target or Instacart. But then let's do some of these smaller tests and see if they're scaled. If we see success, then that's an opportunity where I think we should start leaning in, doubling down in those other networks.
100%. And I think a lot of what becomes overwhelming with the expansion is, again, Amazon advertising has set a standard of complexity. You have multiple ad types, match types, targeting types, and a lot you can do. What a lot of people maybe aren't fully aware of is that as you expand to these other networks, they're not near as complex. So it is actually relatively easy if you have the right team who's willing to test and learn. Because again, scope then becomes a discussion is who's actually willing to do that work for you. But once that groundwork is done, it's pretty easy to get up and running and test and learn. And that can be such a huge opportunity because Amazon, Walmart, to an extent, depending on the brands and the categories you're in, are becoming a lot more pay to play. So having an opportunity to move in where maybe a large brand isn't willing to take that bet because it's a lot of work for not a lot of return up front can be largely advantageous for the mid-market brands.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, right now, I remember years ago when I was launching campaigns on Amazon ads, like CPCs were so low, like extremely low, you know? And that's actually still the case for some markets, like Amazon ads, like in Mexico, for example, I know they're still like at 20, 30 cents, something really low, average CPC. But yeah, to your point, there's a huge opportunity kind of, I guess, to maybe for some of these smaller or medium-sized brands to lean into these other retail media networks, because to your point, maybe larger brands don't view the effort worth it for them. I think another thing I do want to say, yes, I think it is easier for these smaller retail media networks to kind of to launch campaigns there, but I do want to call out there's nuances that I've realized. A lot of times, like even like new to brand measurement is totally different than Amazon or Walmart. Attribution windows, attribution type, like is it view through or click through attribution? All these things I think can be confusing to brands. And that's why if they partner with agencies like ourselves that have that expertise, then we can educate them and let them know, okay, this is how we can compare them to each other, apples to apples, so that you can make informed decisions on which retailer we should actually invest more in.
100%. I think having the retailer scorecard of here's expected outcomes, KPIs, and or insights per platform can be really beneficial. But also, I was talking to one of my favorites in the brand side space, and she had mentioned that they're building internal brand scorecards. So that way, when it comes to things like CPCs, ROAS, conversion, and reach, they already have their baseline scorecards per retailer, which then allows, I would say, from a financial perspective, much better budget allocation. Because I think we're moving towards a future where fiscal planning is going to be a lot more complicated and or how we view budgeting for e-commerce is going to be a lot more complicated because the brands that I see do the best in the space are the ones that are a lot more reactive and can adjust and allocate budgets a lot quicker based on things like, tentpole events or certain advantageous opportunities and audience per retailer as well is super, super important to understand.
Yeah, for sure. I think to your point, brands that are more agile or have a more kind of, they're able to, I guess, change direction quickly. They're the ones that are going to succeed in the space versus maybe some older brands that have a lot of bureaucracy and it takes like a ton of signatures to kind of get a budget in place. That's where they'll start lagging and they won't necessarily win on a lot of these key retailers.
How do you feel like budgeting should be viewed? Like if you were like, what is the balance between being reactive and testing and learning, but also planning in a way that makes it easier to forecast?
Sure. I think whenever I start a relationship with a brand, I want to learn as much as possible from them. What exactly are their goals? What are their key retailers? And that way we can kind of build on their existing strategies and lean in there. If they're already actively doing like in-store promotions with, I don't know, a Macy's or a Nordstrom, then they're already leaned into that particular retailer. So then we should probably double down and focus on that as well with an online presence. So I think a lot of it really is tailored to each brand. And that's kind of like the starting point I would go with.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's actually one of the issues I've ran into from a SaaS perspective, from a reporting perspective in the space, is not having the customization per brand. But every brand nowadays is so incredibly unique. They could be leaning heavy into TikTok Shop, and that could be the core driver of their demand as well. On the flip side, they could be heavy in a certain store where they have fantastic relationships. This makes it really difficult, I feel like, from an agency perspective or a software perspective, to rely on someone to just one size fits all or to set it and forget it. And I think that's where we found a lot of value in what we do at Better Media is providing those custom solutions. again, scalability is a little bit more difficult on agency side because I can't go hire an intern out of college to run an A to Z template for every brand. But the opportunity I think that we have is we're a lot more flexible with brands and our retention rate's a lot higher because we get so close to the brand's goals and needs in order to accommodate the diversity we see.
Yeah, for sure. What I've noticed working at previous agencies and working at some of the largest ones in the world is that, to your point, it's really much a kind of like templated blanket strategy for a lot of clients, unfortunately. And that's just how people are trained within the agency, you know? So I think it's really neat where smaller, like niche agencies like ourselves, we really are able to offer that customization to clients and to brands. And then also really kind of lean in there and create more in-depth strategy than maybe a larger agency can.
100%. You touched on this lightly, the scorecarding the retailers to understand what's available to you. Do you have any advice to someone who's leading an e-commerce team? How do they stay up to date with the trends and the changes and the shiny object syndrome in this space?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, there's so much information out there and it's always changing. There's a new retail media network, I think, launching every week, pretty much. I'm in Texas, and even local regional grocery stores are launching retail media networks. Like one is HEB here that I've heard has launched a retail media network too. So I think really, at least what I do a lot is focus on following key people like on LinkedIn, like yourself, the others in the industry that are ensuring that they're putting out the most up-to-date information. Even following just like the different retail media networks themselves, the core ones, you know, and just seeing what the new products, features that are rolling out. That's really where I kind of lean in. Luckily, also, I have opportunity to kind of actually get into the different ad consoles and kind of see what's rolling out. But I think a lot of it is really just staying up to date, following key leaders in the industry, keep checking your LinkedIn for new notifications, YouTube channels, learning videos that are coming out. And I think really making an effort to stay informed because you could easily, a year or a couple of months could easily go by and so much will roll out that you're unaware of.
I completely agree. I think it's also a question of prioritization. Something that I see in the space is you can either go a mile deep or a mile wide. And the agency model typically reflects one or the other, and it's hard to balance both. So we've really tried to zero in on even, from a RMN perspective, what's the 80-20 per brand? Where do we need to focus our time? And then making sure we're allocating the right resources to that brand or that account focused on the 20% that's driving the 80% of their value, because that prioritization is not easy. Like there's not a day where I'm like, Alex, should we be looking at TikTok shop? Should we be looking at this? Should we be looking at this? Because it's so exciting. There's so much opportunity in our space.
And I think to the point that all those opportunities, that's where our customization comes into play. Like if we know a brand is viral on TikTok, then we should lean into that opportunity. So I think that's just something that at least with our team, we're really agile and able to do that and offer that service to brands.
Well, coming from one of the largest agencies and naturally Amazon, what are the key things operationally that you felt made you successful in both roles for both teams? It's not easy standing out in a large org, but you have such a successful track record. Is there any advice that you would give for someone who's maybe starting out in your role on how to succeed in an org like that?
Sure. I think what's always helped me is understanding what is the end goal for either the org you're in or the book of business you're running. Because as long as you kind of work from there and then work backwards, then you'll always succeed. So you're like, okay, my focus is this is what this team is measuring. This is what will define success for this brand or for this team. And then work towards that. That's where I've always found success. So like, for example, whether I'm onboarding a new client, having an in-depth conversation with them, understanding what exactly is their goal for the year, whether it's let's increase sales 20%, let's increase new customers X%, and then developing a strategy around that with the goal of achieving that and working backwards from that. That's what's always helped me. So I think always never be scared to ask questions. Always have a deep understanding of within your organization, what are the goals for your organization so that you can work towards them and over index, and then you'll be noticed by leadership. So that's very high level, but that's what's helped me.
I think it's fantastic. I think it's the perfect playbook for someone who is being thrown into our industry, but also the same applies to the retailer relationship we were just discussing. How do you work backwards from the core goals your brand is trying to accomplish, segment into the key areas from whether it's Walmart, Costco, Target, XYZ, And then you can build upon those blocks rather than chasing every single shiny object to just accomplish whatever you would like.
Yeah, for sure.
What are the biggest risks you think in not diversifying outside of an Amazon or a Walmart?
I think from my experience, retail RMNs, it's the future. I think it's like one of the traditional media. It's flat or not really growing as much. I'm talking about like the Googles and Facebook or Metas. And this is really the space that's going to continue growing. At least that's what I foresee. So I think even though scale might be low for certain RMNs right now, I think in a year, 3 years, 5 years, it could be a huge opportunity. I know from experience working even at DoorDash, I won't speak too much, but I just know that the growth there has been astronomical, even within their Armin in the past year and a half that I was there. And it's really kind of under the radar. A lot of people aren't noticing it yet. I think the same will happen for a lot of these other RMNs. And that's why I think right now is a key opportunity for brands to lean in there, test, and then kind of be, I guess, first advertisers to lean in and kind of own that space.
It's interesting seeing just your mention of kind of traditional media being flat. And if we even go further back to like national media, the opportunity we have with RMNs is to be so incredibly precise with our targeting.
Mm-hmm.
And when we are able to serve an ad to someone right at a certain point of purchase, while also overlapping their demographic, their audience, their path to purchase insights, the conversion rate's so much higher. Now, of course, we can over index that and be way too niche and not drive any awareness. But the brands that are finding that balance between incredibly granular targeting that is aligned from a creative audience perspective, but still hitting enough scale are the ones that are able to succeed. And I think we're seeing it when we look at all the Johnson& Johnsons, the Procter& and Gambles. They're scrambling a little bit because they're seeing so many of these disruptor brands come in and be a lot more flexible than what they are.
Yeah, for sure. I guess like with traditional media, when I say traditional, I'm saying like TV, or cable, TV, radio, print. I think back in the day, what they would say is I'm spending a lot on media, but I don't know which half is actually successful. I know half of it's performing well, but I don't know which half. I think is that what they would say. So I think now, especially to your point, it's an amazing opportunity with advertising. There's so much more insight than historically.
Oftentimes too much insight, I would say at this point.
That's true, because a lot of times brands don't know what metrics to focus on in those scenarios. So I think a lot of it is the space is still educating brands on what metrics we need to focus on, depending on what type of media it is, like whether it's streaming TV, paid search ads, etc. But to your point, yeah, these platforms like Amazon with Prime, now Walmart purchasing Vizio. I think a lot more, especially like within the, I guess, streaming space and awareness space is going to grow.
I completely agree. I think we've over-indexed maybe to too much data, too much insights, honestly. I think we talk with a lot of brands and, they've become solely focused on ROAS, solely focused on CVC and conversion rate because that's the language we've been speaking.
Yep.
The balance is taking the psychology of marketing that built the industry, which is, to your point of what half performed better when it was about a lift test. It was about frequency and just overexposure to brands is what made it successful, in my opinion. We know that from a psychological perspective. So how do we take those same philosophies, but combine them with the appropriate data and insights to start figuring out which side is performing best and leaning out. And I think that comes down to, again, there's something to be said about awareness, something to be said about the streaming TV campaign, but we need to view it from a different lens than performance marketing.
Yeah, for sure. I actually have a prime example of this. When I was at Amazon, I did like a full media strategy for a client. So included like awareness, like streaming TV, and then all the way down, and then DSP, and then also sponsored ads. And they wanted to measure everything off of ROAS, even the streaming TV campaign. And then I was like, you can't do that. And then I had to educate them and kind of make them think, okay, how do you measure cable TV ads right now? So kind of had to like educate them and think that way. And then also, luckily now we also have other insights though, like we're able to utilize AMC. So we can kind of showcase the benefit of everything from streaming TV, DSP and sponsored ads together. And then to your point, like brand lift studies as well. So things like that. So once I was able to educate the brand, then they were able to understand and see, okay, this campaign was successful for me. And then they continue to utilize that as a part of their strategy going forward. But to your point, if they only had focused on ROAS, they would have cut everything out except sponsored products.
I love it. I think it's a really fun space to be in right now. We're constantly learning. And I think that's what's the most exciting is like you never get bored. There's a update from Amazon probably every 7 days at this point that I need to figure out how to educate and how to systemize. And it keeps the space incredibly interesting. Well, with that, it's been incredible having you on. I'm so excited to see what we can do together. Do you have anything you want to give to the audience? Maybe advice for managing in 2025 or any mental models that you would like to leave them with?
Sure. Well, I think, let's see. I think going into next year, a lot of it is going to be, at least what I would like to focus on at Better Media, is a lot of education, maybe on some of these smaller RMNs that people are unaware of. Possibly building even maybe like case studies or one pagers for like certain categories, like let's say the beauty category, luxury category, et cetera, and kind of highlight what kind of opportunities exist to them and how Better Media can assist them with following those strategies or accomplishing goals that they might have. I think right now going forward, I think some themes we'll see is hopefully more alignment in terms of measurement across RMNs. I think IAB has rolled out like a measurement guideline for our RMNs, but it's really just recommendations. It's not enforcing them to do it. So I think there's an opportunity for more alignment there in terms of measurement. And then one of my goals is just to work with my clients, educating them of the different opportunities, the smaller RMNs that exist, helping them achieve their goals with everything out in addition to Walmart, Amazon, et cetera.
I love it. So basically, what I'm hearing, if you're listening to this podcast, if you're watching this video on LinkedIn, make sure you're following Lance on every platform because he's going to be adding so much value to, I think, the vision of Better Media, which is educating in full transparency and making sure we're leading the industry with all these strategies that no one keep up with. So, Lance, thank you so much for hopping on. It was incredible getting the chance to talk to you, and I cannot wait to see what we can accomplish together in 2025.
Of course. Thank you so much, Destiny. It's been great talking with you as well.